All right. First of all, I want to say kudos to Ethan for setting this up. Thank you, bud. Good job. And I can't emphasize how important it is to actually all of us working together to help each other to be able to parent our kids. The one thing that I've learned in 30 years of ministry and 5 kids and 36 years of marriage and public school, home school, never did private school, is that the one common denominator is always the parent. When I was a school bus driver and I was a substitute bus driver, which is the lowest form of life, nobody gave you respect then. You know, the key was always, as I saw a kid come out of a North Kansas City house or a Polk County house or whatever house, the kid always matched the home. They always matched the home. And you know, I don't want to kind of put everything on parents, but at the same time, you need to pay real close attention to what you are, what you aren't doing. And my subject is to being relationally wise in parenting and how that actually applies. And it's very important. You've already heard it, actually over and over and over again, actually. And that is, how you handle yourself has a huge impact on how these kids will handle themselves. And, you know, I'm sort of done, as in like, you know, I'm now on to the second generation, and I'm working on grandkids, which is a whole other ballgame. Obviously a lot more fun. I can do whatever I want. And, but, you know, again, to be able to handle myself was probably and is the most important thing. So let's kind of talk about, just remind ourselves, and for those that don't know about relational wisdom and don't really kind of think about it, when it comes to your life, it's all about the relationships and how you handle them. So you have 3 relationships in your life. That's it, period. You have a relationship with God, whether you like Him or not. He's still your Father. Okay? I have a father in Houston. I have no relationship with him, but he's still my father. All right? I see his pictures every now and then. My half-brother kind of notifies me a little bit. He's getting to the point where he's not feeling so good. And there might be a day where he'll be gone, but he's still there. And he's still the guy, you know, regardless. So, you know, God is always there whether you like him or not. The second is your relationship with yourself. And this is the one that we have a lot of difficulty with, is our own relationship with ourselves. There is no deception like self-deception. Satan works most in the deceiving of ourselves. We get to believe our own press. So, you know, I'm pastor, father, husband, doctor, you know, professional, degree earner, whatever, you know, that somehow or another I'm something. But actually, I'm only something because of God, actually. That's the only thing that makes me anything. And, you know, you have to really kind of pay attention to yourself. And so, you know, I could go on for a long time about myself in that regard. And then, of course, there's our relationship with others, which is where the kids come in. Okay? The kids are other. They're not you. They don't even belong to you. They'll show you that as they get older, that they don't belong to you. They'll vote with their mouth and their feet and everything else they got. So, again, those 3 areas. Now, you know, just to kind of remind ourselves, when it comes to God, okay, and we're going to fairly assume that most everybody's got some kudos for God here, by and large. There might be some folks that listen somehow that don't, but just remember, knowing God is not enough. Okay? So, you know, contextualize it to marriage. I'm married to Pam. And 36 years does not do anything, honestly, for today. Right? If I don't kiss her, love her, say hi to her, compliment her, recognize her, listen to her, be there for her today, it doesn't matter how many years I've been there before, you're not there today. And again, the point being is this: if you don't engage God in your life, then knowing Him is not really being a part of your life. He becomes more of an outside person than an inside person. And we can say more about that, and I will in a minute. But just remember, knowledge about God is not knowing God. Okay? You have to get up close and personal and smell each other's breath. You got to be able to see the blackheads and the pores and the whole reality, and you got to get past the just the knowledge, and you get to the intimacy. So when I wake up in the morning, who is it that I really actually relate to? Who is it that I'm going to spend my day with? How am I going to spend my day? What relationships are really going to... And if God's not in there, then of course you're on your own. And even though you know Him, He's disengaged. You engage Him by relating to Him. Now, good news is, okay, get this down. Remember this, okay? He loves you more than you could ever love yourself. He loves you as much as He loves His Son, Jesus. God loves you, and He is very much aware of all your, if you don't mind me saying, crap. Okay? He's got it all. He knows it all. You're not going to tell Him anything, actually. The only thing you will try to do, probably, is keep it from Him. And the fact is that He don't want you to do that. He already knows He loves you. He wants to be close to you. He's done everything He can to be close to you. And it is important for you to engage God. Now, when it comes to kind of ourselves, I'm a person that does not really do well with self-awareness. I don't know my own feelings and my own needs. I don't know my own stuff. People say to me, you look sad. I'm like, no, I'm not sad. My wife will tell me that my eyebrow goes up and I point my finger out when I'm upset. To this day, I have not seen it. If I stand in a mirror, I still can't see it. And yet the kids will also recognize it as well. And again, the point is that others are aware of us and aware of what's going on, but we have to be aware of ourselves. And you have to pay attention to yourself. It does help to actually take clues from other people. You cannot be so proud that you can't listen to people. You have to listen to people. Whether you like them or not. You listen to people because they can give you a view of yourself that you can't get. And one of the tools that's kind of come up in industry, if you would, is the 360 view. And the 360 view is inviting other people to actually give you an idea of how they see you and how they relate to you. I was doing this with a person, and in their actual industry, they asked all their employees to do a 360 view. And when we went over it, the person basically told me, they said just exactly what I kind of thought. And I was like, okay, well, let's think about this. How'd you do this? Well, I gave it to them, and they put their name down, and then they filled out their thing. And I said, you had them put their name down? Are you kidding me? I said, no, they gave you what they know that you wanted to hear. Okay? And the only way that for them to be truthful was for him or that person to be able actually to let them express themselves without consequence. So went around and did it again. Guess what? Totally different. Totally different. And so this is an important point. Okay, hear me here. You want to get along with your kids? Allow them to dialogue with you about how you really are. If you don't let them express how they're experiencing you, then you're not going to be self-aware in your parenting. And you need to be self-aware. You need to listen. You need to listen. So, being self-aware, of course now, if you share with somebody how you see them, or if you take a look at yourself and you don't do anything about it, well then that's useless. And people will actually quit helping you because they're not going to tell you anything anymore because you don't do anything about it. Have you ever had a person that's like, I have this problem, that problem, because you talk to me and you talk to them, 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 and what? Nothing ever changes. And after a while you're like, okay, look, you need to find somebody else because this ain't working. We're not getting anywhere. And that's kind of hard sometimes for people to realize. But again, if you don't engage yourself. So if I ask my kids, hey, is there something Mom and I are doing that's not really great? That's harmful to you, that's hard to you. That's why I love that list that Andrew did. I mean, that was just really good. To hear what the kids have to say. And Katie, I'm excited for you to do that with your classes. So, again, the ability to actually hear, but then you got to do something about it. Okay? One of the things that Promise Keepers gave me more than anything else was that very thing. Be a promise keeper. If you say you're not going to do that again, don't do that again. If you say you're going to be there, be there. If you mess up, tell them do to them what you want them to do with you, and that is admit it. If you don't ever admit you're wrong, they're never going to admit they're wrong. You've got to engage yourself if you're really going to actually experience them growing and so on. So again, and then of course the other aware and other engaged. So you got to take time to really kind of find out, and I think Jason and others really pointed to this. What's going on for your kids? What's going on for your kids? I remember at one time when one of my kids was going through some stuff, and we were walking, and we were talking about some things, and I'm going to evade the details just because I don't want to put that out there. But it just suddenly dawned on me that there was a particular direction one of my kids was going, and I was like, and I turned to them and I was like, are you doing that? And the dumbfounded look they gave me told me my answer, although they never wanted to say it, and I don't think they actually ever did. And I was flabbergasted. Flabbergasted. It was a very difficult time. We were spending 9 months out of 12 at KU. Sarah was on the brink of life and death half the time. We were going through so much, I felt really honestly guilty about being a pastor here because I didn't have the ability to do a job. I thought maybe I could get a parking attendant job down at KU, and at least I'd be honest. I could, give something back for the money I'm getting. And I had no idea that my kids, so like my son Seth had his 16th birthday and I wasn't there because Sarah was on the brink of life and death. What do you do? I'm one person. Jesus was one person. He was only in one place at one time. And then Seth had his 18th birthday. Same thing. And you just kind of find yourself in these situations. But here's what I did. I found out that there was some really bad ways of handling life going on in my family. And I was like, well, yelling at people and telling them it's wrong and chastising them for these things and so on and so forth does not work. That does not work. And I had come to understand, and this I'll be specific about how I come to understand it. My son Matthew and I went to a class, a big presentation, of a guy who was fostered and adopted, and he talked about what really was helpful to him, what wasn't, and so on. He was a professional now, and so on. But Maddie and I kind of learned this thing from this guy, And Matt and I were sitting there like going, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. You know, and I mean, it was really an awareness thing for both of us, understanding, you know, the nuances and the difficulties when you feel abandoned, when you feel alone, when you feel, you know, not loved and so on. And how that actually came into, you know, one of my other kids is that Pam and I were not there. We were barely able to be there. And some of you might remember, or probably maybe don't, but we actually had somebody come stay at the house, you know, and we had a person that actually lived and gave some structure and some care and attention and so on and so forth. And that person's very special to us. But the fact is that I had to realize, I had to listen, I had to take ownership of the fact that my kid was in a bad place. I didn't understand it. I wouldn't deal with it that way, but that's the way they were. So I had learned this, you know, I don't know if I can completely describe this to you, but I had learned that giving time was more valuable than instruction. Does that make sense? So here's what I did. When I was able, and when I was there, and I was there more than Pam, because I'd be at the house 5 days. Pam would be at the hospital 5 days. Pam would come home 2 days. I'd be at the hospital 2 days. That's the way we were doing it. So I was more the caretaker. So there was a lot of chocolate cake and things like that instead of healthy meals. But anyway, so I just spent time with them. And I cannot emphasize enough the absolute power of presence. The absolute power of presence. And you know, I've heard it said, and I say it, how do you spell love? T-I-M-E. That's how you spell it. And so every day I took time and spent time, didn't talk about anything I wanted to talk about. Because I want to talk about what is wrong with you. Didn't talk about any of that. Talked about whatever was important. And then I began to realize. And you know, this is another thing that I learned actually from Coach McCartney. Because I had read the book called Sold Out. And again, like I said, I gained a lot from Promise Keepers. And you know, the weirdest thing of all about Coach McCartney is that while he's out there speaking to 85,000 men, his wife is back home contemplating killing herself. And when Coach was, you know, I'm from Boulder, he was in Boulder, you know, so we had sort of an affinity there. And he was at church, at Broadway Baptist Church. I know the church. And there was a pastor there speaking on that Sunday morning, a guest pastor. And he asked Coach, not just Coach, but all the men in the room, I want you to look into your wife's eyes right now. And I want you to see how you're doing. I want you to look in your wife's eyes and see how you're doing. And Coach said, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Because I knew all I was going to see was pain. All I was going to see is pain. And so when Coach wrote, you know, the book, Sold Out, he really actually sort of, you know, divulged a lot of his struggles and a lot of the difficulties that he faced. And this is one of the things he said. Having my kids on the sidelines at a Colorado Buffalo game was not being with them. My kids are not impressed with my position in society and life. I remember Joe Gibbs saying the same thing. I won the Super Bowl, world's biggest game. I go get in the car with my kids and all they want to know is one thing. Where are we going to have pizza, Dad? Are we going to Papa John's? Or are we going to this? Or are we going to that? And again, it really goes back to being other aware. Being other aware. Being aware of what your kids are actually going through. and adjusting your life. So that means other engaged. Other engaged. Just remember this, okay? The only value this church actually has is what it does for the people that are in it. If people walk through the door, people come into some form, part of our fellowship and so on, and they don't experience actual fellowship, they don't experience actual engagement, then it's not a church. It's not a place where the Holy Spirit resides. It's not a place where the Word of God is actually being lived out. You know, if my neighbor tells me, I say, how you doing? And they tell me, and I act like I didn't hear what they said, that's useless. I'll give you a little for instance. Ethan and I had a little fun putting the sign back out in front of the church. I was downtown going to a pastor's prayer at the Buchanan County Courthouse. Okay? And I was parked and I was waiting and I was in the wrong place. So I was at the city hall and I needed to be at the courthouse. So I was a little messed up on that. I didn't have the details. Go figure on that, right, Jace? So, but I was catching up with him. And so this guy, I see this guy and this woman, they're walking toward me, and he has a full-fledged, great big, like a mud track tire and rim. And he's carrying it. And I'm like, okay. And then there's a gal behind him that has an entirely three-folded ladder. And she's carrying it with a sack on this other side. And they came to me and they said, you know, I rolled down the window. I'm like, you know, this is going to be interesting. I said, what's going on? They said, could you give us a ride? We need to get over to such and such. Could you give us a ride? Now, generally, what would I do? I'd give him a ride, you bet. I'd give him my last $20. I'd put him in a car. I would not take him to my house. I do not risk my family like that. But I would do anything I could for him. But I was about to pray. so I had to say, I'm so sorry, but I can't. I'm sorry. I'm going to be praying with some guys here in just about 2 minutes. And then 2 seconds later, I realized I wasn't at the right place, so I was really in trouble. And so anyway, I had to say no. And it really bugged me to do that, of course. Because I am a person who actually not only hears people, but I actually believe in engaging in what they tell you. So a couple days later, I asked Ethan to go out and help me. We've been changing the sign out front. And we had the 50th, then we had the trunk or treat, and now we're putting our regular sign back out there. And so we're putting up the sign. Here comes 2 people walking across the parking lot, carrying an orange bag. And they come walking up, and I was like, that's so stupid. And so, you know, in a totally different location. And so, you know, they come walking up, and inside of my heart, I'm kind of actually glad because I had to kind of not help them before, and I don't know what's going to happen now. I don't know what's going on. They're obviously headed toward us, and, you know, so I'm going to get a chance. So anyway, he comes walking up, and he says, you know, hey, and I'm like, hey, and he's I'm like, what's your name? And he says, Adam, and I says, is this Eve? And he says, no. And so then he said, I said, by the way, do you remember me? And he goes, no, I don't. I said, well, you owe me $100. He just looked at me and he's like, what? Anyway, I said, no. I said, the other day, remember you were carrying a tire, and which I don't understand, but then you were carrying a ladder and so on and so on. Oh, yeah, we only got like $20 for all that metal and so on and so forth. So that's what they were doing. They were scrapping. And so anyway, he says to me, he goes, look, he said, we got some cards from, you know, some of the organization and stuff, one of those and one at Target. We're kind of homeless, and we're just, well, we got our stuff here. This is everything we own and all we got, and it's in this bag. Would you be willing to keep it for us? Because we're afraid if we leave it somewhere and we can't take it into the stores, somebody's going to steal our stuff. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no problem. No problem whatsoever. I said, just take it right over there to the church door, and you see the side area that's kind of, you know, inset. Just set it in there, Nobody will bother it. It'll be just fine. It'll be there when you need it. And so they did. And so then they come back walking by, and they turn around, and the bag's gone. And I was like, oh my gosh, somebody took the bag. I was like, oh yeah, there's a church for you. It'll be safe. Gone 5 minutes later. So anyway, but it was kind of fun. But my point simply is this, if you become aware of what's going on for people and you don't engage it, that is a very, very painful experience for people. And imagine how it is for kids. Okay? When it comes to your kids, you got to live with margin in your life. Right? I'll be real transparent. Today's Saturday, yesterday's Friday. Friday's my day off. Okay? That's my day off. And I got tons of stuff to do around my house and things that I'm involved in. And then there's the things that I want and like to do. Okay? I get up real early so that, I can get a lot of stuff, things that I like to do before anybody's going to bother me, People don't text you at 4 a.m. in the morning. There ain't nobody out there. Which, by the way, if you're upset and lonely, that's not a good time to be reaching out. But anyway, so, one of my kids texts me, can you do this and this and that and so on and so forth. And I was like, at first I was like, but here's my point. Yeah, I went ahead and did it. And I put off a lot of things. A lot of things I would have rather, and some that I kind of need to do. So I mowed the grass real fast because it ain't going to wait. And I'm going to be gone next week and so on. So I was trying to get everything in order. But my point simply is this. When my kid asks me, would you do this? If I don't do it, it tells them that I'm not engaged with them. Do you understand? So can you see how you know God? But what does He actually have to do with your day-to-day? Do you engage God? You have yourself, but are you aware of what's going on with yourself? Do you ever take the time to honestly and sincerely receive from yourself, from God, and from other people what's going on with you? Okay? Even if they don't have good intent, still listen. You have to weigh it, but still listen. And do something about it. Do something about it. My wife Pam, her love language is words of affirmation. Mine are not. I don't. And I'm not a letter writer. I'm not a note writer. I'm not a book writer. I don't like writing at all. And I have a tendency to see what needs to be done and not what is. So guess what words come out of my mouth?
Why isn't that done?
Instead of saying, oh, thanks for this and thanks for that, and oh, I see, So she helps me a little bit when I walk in the house. We kind of play, is there anything that you can see? I'm like, to get your hair done? Is this a new outfit? And of course the kids, when I come, even though they're adults, they still want to give me everything that they got, all they've got, and they'll call me, and I'm like, oh, okay. I need Reader's Digest version, okay? Can you give me, condense this into about 100 words and I'll be good. But again, the bottom line is that to really actually engage yourself. And this is something I'm working on myself right now. I find that I medicate myself by actually being away from the important people in my life. I find that I have a difficult time relaxing and just being with them. You know what that means? Because I'm tasked. Okay? It was really sad because my kids, they got to where they hated Mother's Day. And they told Pam. And now Pam is mad at me. because I have ruined Mother's Day. The one day she's got, you know. And the one thing that matters more than our wedding day is Mother's Day, you know, and being a mother. And so, you know, she's like, David, the kids hate Mother's Day. I said, what's it got to do with them? It ain't their day. You know, what's their problem? So she said, well, because on Mother's Day, you command them like some kind of general out of a war zone. I said, well, yeah. I mean, it's their time to take care of Mom. So, yeah, get your butt over here and do this and chop that and cook that and buy this and write that and so on and so forth and say this. And she said, David, I cannot get along with the fact that the kids hate Mother's Day. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I don't know any other way than just to tell them what to do. And so God is gracious, God is kind, and if you'll actually listen and let Him speak to you, He'll tell you things. And here's what He said. You know, you can do something. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I could. Instead of commanding it to be done, I can actually do it. And so that's what I did. I planned it out, which means a lot to my wife. I bought it, I organized it, and I began to prepare it. And this is all I said. If you kids would like to help me do this, I'll be glad to have you. If you don't, that's fine. I'm just glad you're here. Mother's Day is now a fun place. And I still have somebody to sleep with, so that's good. That's very good. So again, you know, there's so many applications to the whole aware engage of God, yourself, and others. And I think you can get real clearly the implications. But I want to make sure that I communicate this latter part, and that's on the back page, if you would. Many of you are aware of the relational wisdom stuff and so on and so forth. But I want to get this across, and this is something that I'm beginning to understand and discover as well. And I know it, by the grace of God, I know it. But I'm becoming much more intentional in understanding about it. So first of all, no matter where you are in the stage of parenting, don't go back to the past and fault yourself in the present and make yourself shameful and make yourself, you know, overwhelmed and you can't fix it and so on and so forth. I agree with most everything we said here today except for one thing. You can actually fix it. You do have other times because, you know, if you went back there and screwed up, which I have, you can fix it today. And by that I mean you can become the person you should have been there, and it makes a difference today. And I think Hattie sort of alluded to that, Jason alluded to that, and that's a fact. That is a fact. So do not look to the past and say it's impossible. It's not. It is possible. By the grace of God, all things are possible. When your children are young, being the parent carries enough control to handle them. But if you don't grow up as they grow older, your maturity will stunt their maturity at the level of your own. So another way of saying this is your family has this barrel with slats, and this was an illustration used on church growth type stuff. Well, your emotional level in the family, your maturity level in the family is only going to go as high as your slat is. That's as high as it's going to go. And I want to encourage you to understand you've got to grow, because commanding your children is not going to work forever. It's not going to work forever. And no measure of control can handle that. Okay? So that's what happens. You know, people who use their position to command their children into performance will find themselves out of a job very soon, and then also maybe a little bit lonely and needing of repair the relationship with the kids, because you cannot do it like that. It's got to be more than that. It's okay when they're little, but it won't last forever. Number two, parenting exposes unresolved issues we might otherwise ignore or be perpetually unaware of. So again, you know, I talked about some of that, just revealing some of my things. Like it or not, those we love tend to most often reveal unresolved issues in us. And so, I was talking a little bit about, the socialization thing you get accused of when you homeschool your kids. And I'm like, that's ridiculous, because the fact is that there ain't anybody reveals you more than the people that you live with. You can go to school and fake it quite a bit, but you really can't fake it very much at home. And so, just understand this. Pay attention to the things that come up for you in the home. Don't excuse them because you're the authority and no one else is watching. It matters what you do. And you got to solve those unresolved issues, So like, at one time in my life, I handled things by anger. And then one day I finally saw the result of my actions. And instead of ignoring it further, or putting it off on the kids or Pam, or my job, or God, or whatever, the dog, or whatever, I started dealing with myself. And admitting to myself that I had a problem, that I needed help, and began to actually seek that in many ways, God, yourself, and others, and you'll get a good team there. Also, number 3, if anything is to change, we must admit that some things have happened in our lives that just should not have happened. And we have been harmed by what happened. For many of us, it is too costly to admit this. And so, I put off a lot of things in my life that I didn't really recognize or pay attention to. And, we don't need to be vomiting all the time, in front of people and all that. But you do have to admit some things to yourself. And I've had to be honest with myself about some of the things that have happened to me and some of the ways that I've actually handled it. And not to put myself down or to deride myself, but to honestly find out how that's actually affecting me today. And so that's a new area for me. I've not really had that very much, but it is an important area. Also, early on, rules are essential to parenting and protecting our children, but as they grow older, rules need to be merged and eventually replaced with principles that will guide them. But if we haven't learned principles, we may resort to imposing rules onto our children because it feels like we're able to better control their behaviors. We will discover that we have raised either rebellious or compliant children. Rebellious or compliant children. Compliant children don't get to learn how to make their own life choices. They need to own their own choices. And another way of saying this is that sometimes you've got to let your kids, you got to let them fail. You got to let them make mistakes and so on and so forth. And you can't protect them from everything. And they've got to make their own choices. But more than anything else, just understand, rules will only last for a little while, until they're about 5 to 9 years old. And then you got to start doing some other things. Okay, so like for instance, right now with Harper, don't go on the street. Don't. Okay? Now, she's older a little bit, and we're teaching her something else now. Not don't go on the street, because we do have to cross the street. What do you think we're teaching her now? Look both ways. Yeah. And look again. Okay, because, she'll go like this. We're like, no. Look. Look and see. And again, if you're not doing it, guess what? She's not going to do it either. So, again, we will discover that we have raised rebellious or compliant children, and compliant children don't learn how to make their own life choices, and they need to learn. Also, number 5, God has given us the most excellent on-ramp to the hearts of our children, and that is love. That is love. And this is most important. Understand this, okay? Your kids do not perform to their value in your life. They don't have to perform to be valued in your life. You just love them, no matter what. No matter what. No matter what. How does God deal with us? Okay? Does he love us or judge us? He loves us. And Christ demonstrated his love for us in that while we were yet sinners, just imagine, sticking your tongue out, having your kids sticking your tongue out while you're loving them. Maybe mooning you or something, I don't know, something really bad. And you're still going to love them. You're not going to give back what they're giving you. You're going to give them love. And so this is an important part, because you cannot threaten your children to compliance. And if they'll also rebel, but what matters more than anything else is that you bond with them. Okay, so get this, and I'll tell you this when it comes to Maddie and Essie. They were big kids when I got them, and they had seen everything. There's nothing that they had not seen, unfortunately. And the system was worse. The system was worse. The quote system to protect them was worse than their actual birth home. Now, I can't change all that. I can't change any of that. What I did is I just held Maddie on my lap. And he's taller than I am. I kiss my boys every single time I see them. Not on the lips like the Amish. I kiss them on the neck. I'm French, I guess. I don't know. All I know is that it was very, very, very important that we make a bond and a relationship. Well, that's true with anybody. It doesn't matter, foster, adoptive, birth. You have to bond with your kids. And the only way you're going to bond with your kids is not Gorilla Glue, all right, or fences. The only way you're going to bond with your kids is time and love. And that's the gateway to actually getting them to heartfelt obedience, okay? I remember one time I ran from my mom, and she was chasing me, and it was in Thornton, Colorado, one of the first houses I remember living in. And I scaled this wall, and she tried to follow me, and she didn't make it. And she hit the wall, and she gashed her leg and cut her leg, and it was bloody and messy, and she was crying and screaming. And guess what I did? I stopped running. And I came back, and I said, "I'm so sorry, Mom. Oh, I'm sorry. The rest of my life, anytime I saw my mom's leg, I saw that scar. And, because I love my mom, I didn't want to do that. And that is what brought obedience in my life. Not my mom threatening me with a brush that she would whack me with, which I just laughed at because it never hurt. But again, it's all about that love. Engendering heartfelt obedience takes more time, but compliance will leave us with the anesthetized, presentable-looking teenagers who will adopt a very different lifestyle once they leave our home. This is one of the things I've seen. Christian school, homeschool kids leave home, and they live like hell. Compliance does not do it. Does not do it. You got to get it. You got to get it. It's got to be heartfelt. Got to let them find their own answers. Number 6, a rule is a directive or prohibition aimed at governing a specific behavior. It is inflexible and comes with a direct penalty if violated. Over time, if rules are all we use to parent our kids, kids can learn to resent the response, begrudging compliance. They can end up doing the behavior to avoid a penalty and never get to learn the beauty of heartfelt obedience, of doing it because they want to, because they love you, because you love them, And, I think about the people in my life that, if I was causing them pain, it would hurt me a ton to realize that. And I don't want to do that. Now, why is that? Because they're threatening me? No. Because they love me. And I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to hurt them. Number 7, finally. A guideline is much different It gives more direction than directive. It employs a principle, a way of seeing, to help children navigate a variety of life decisions. Remember, a guideline says, here's why you would choose those behaviors and not why you would choose these behaviors and not those. And I will stand with you as you mature in these choices. A conviction is a particular belief or position which has become your own. Age-related progression of conversations, modeling, and guidance helps nurture convictions. All of this in the context of seeing life together. So let me give you an illustration of that. So my boys, they got older and they like girls. All right? And I could see, they liked a girl. And I'd say, you like that girl? And they go, yeah. And I would say, why? I don't know. I said, well, here's another question for you. What do you want to do with her? I don't know. I said, oh, yeah, I know. And I was very, very straightforward and blunt. And I said, this is what you want to do. Oh, Dad, that's gross. What are you talking about? I said, I'm talking truth, and you know I am. And I just want you to pay attention to what you're really feeling. I said, you need to think about this. What do you really want to do with this girl? What do you intend to do with this girl? Why would you enter into a relationship with her? And again, what am I doing? I'm discussing with them the realities of relationship and the realities of their feelings and so on and so forth, and just kind of helping them to actually navigate and to direct that. I did not tell them, don't you do this and don't you do this and don't you do that. What I was helping them actually to do is to figure out why they felt the way they did and what they were going to do with it and how they were going to direct themselves. And again, it was guidance and principles rather than rules and penalty. Rules, unfortunately, don't create lasting heartfelt obedience much after the age of 9. A motivation that gets to trust the direction of Jesus instead of being compelled to comply with the commands of Jesus. And let me conclude with this. If your relationship with God is based upon your compliance, if you think that the only reason that you need to follow God is because He's going to hammer you, it's not heartfelt. He's not hammering you. He loves you. He loves you. The first time the kid pukes on you, the first time the kid poops, that mustard-looking stuff all over your brand new, clothes and dress, only an immature parent actually faults that kid and chastises that kid for that moment. Really mature people love that kid no matter what. And I want to tell you this, okay? Father God loves you and He loves me. You can't change that. You cannot change that. You cannot increase it. You cannot decrease it. It is full steam all the time. All the time. And what I want you to understand that for is this. If you don't relate to God out of heartfelt obedience, then your kids won't get it either. Because, and this is actually physically true, you literally, your kids will pick up what you emotionally do. Now get this, on a cellular level. You understand what I'm saying? On a cellular level. They will literally pick up the chemical reactions inside your body and mimic those in their body by the emotional relationship that you're having with them. Would you give your kids cocaine? No. But you know what? Sometimes by not dealing with ourselves and by not really taking, good consideration of ourselves and so on, and by ignoring what's really going on for us, sometimes we're actually impugning in them things that we're not willing to deal with. So don't feel bad about it, okay? Don't feel bad about it. Just do this. Start being honest with God, yourself, and others. I remember the first time I had to come to Seth and admit to him something, terrible it is. You might not think it's terrible. I think it was terrible. We had a rule in our house: no R movies. Okay, so that was a rule. Anyway, I'll process that later. So JFK came out, and I don't know why, but I wanted to see it. But it was R-rated. They didn't have VidAngel yet, so I went and got it. It was a VHS, because that's what you had then. And so I got it. And because I didn't want anybody to know that I got it, I hid it. So my father Adam and I were very close at that point. And so I hid it. Guess what happened? Seth found it. Little sneak. What were you doing in the couch behind the seat? That's where I had my drugs. What are you doing there? So anyway, he found it. And when he did, it severely upset him. He went straight to his mom, not to tell, but because he was so sad. And of course he came to Pam and said, "Look what I found." And her reaction, of course, was, "That father of yours." Because she knew the dude that was responsible. It's not mine. I don't know how I got there. Anyway, so when I got home, Pam said, "I got something to tell you, and I want you to just listen to me." And I said, "Okay." So she told me about it, and I said, "Oh, yeah, that's me." And so I took the tape. Then I went into my son's room, and I walked in, and I said, "Bubby," I said, I'm real sorry. Dad screwed up, son. I made a mistake. I wish that was the only time I ever had to do that. It's not, of course not. But what I do know is that I learned that day to actually do with them what I want them to do with me, to do with God what I want with them, and so on. So when it comes to your life, think about this. Your relationship with God, got it? Engage it. Your relationship with yourself, understand it, engage it. Your relationship with others, understand them and engage it. And then you will actually have the best opportunity for the gospel to happen in your kids' lives. Amen? All right. Thank you for done.